Lexie.
Hi, thank you.
It's great having you here, and you're also now officially an Endofound ambassador.
Yes, I am.
For a very long time, you've been involved with the foundation, but before you got involved, what was your journey like? When were you diagnosed with endometriosis?
I was diagnosed with endometriosis, I believe, my sophomore or junior year of high school. And I was diagnosed actually while I was having surgery to remove something else, and they saw endometrial tissue in there. So
Did you ever have symptoms of endometriosis, or it was just coincidental that they coincided?
no, I had a lot of endometriosis symptoms. They did start when I was in 8th grade in high school. It kind of was, just really bad period cramps is kind of what we, chopped it up to. As I started going through high school, the um the symptoms kind of progressed. I'd be out, hanging out with my friends, or I'd be at an event, or, I'd even be on set filming for something. And all of a sudden I'd have these, really, really sharp pains. And it would happen even when I wasn't on my period. And I think that's kind of when we knew something was up.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Well, that's also something to mention about endo is that there's this misconception that endo is only bad cramps or when you only have your period, yet it can be
Yeah.
pretty much any time of month.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that was kind of, I think honestly that was a big thing for me. And the more I talk to people, the more I have really bad period cramps, and and I'm not one to diagnose anybody, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, if they're, pulling you out of school or pulling you out of work, I think at that point it's appropriate to go and see your OBGYN and say, hey, I think there's something really wrong here. Cause I tell everybody, your body more than anyone else does. So if you think there's something wrong, there's probably something wrong.
For you, what was like the telltale sign that something wasn't right, that this wasn't just like an uncomfortable period every month?
I one what kind of I guess was my, I don't want to say breaking point. I'll say breaking point for lack of a better term, but kind of the thing that told me, okay, I'm really done here, is I ended up in the ER one time.
Mm.
And they had given me a lot of pain medication, probably to the point where somebody my size should have definitely not been awake. I shouldn't have still been crying, but I was. And they just could not get the pain to stop. So at that point, I went down. I went down to see a doctor in Boston, and when they had done, I guess, an internal ultrasound, they had seen a growth on my ovary, so they wanted to make sure it wasn't cancerous. Um, it scared them a little bit, so I guess that like they went in to go and remove that. And while they were in there, they saw that there was endometrial tissue that had actually wrapped up the size of it had wrapped my small intestine into a ball the size of a golf ball. So they had to remove that along with the endometrial tissue. But somehow, I guess the intestine had resolved. My mom knows more because I was younger, so I don't remember the whole thing. But I guess it had kind of resolved itself, which is why it didn't create a blockage.
Yeah.
But there was just kind of this like small ball of intestine like hanging around, I guess. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, and we always hammer that home that endo is so much more than just the reproductive organs. It's
Right.
actually pelvic. It can affect the intestines. I mean, we see things on social media about people going through having to wear bags because they've had part of their intestine removed, and sometimes it's temporary bags, and other times it's a bag for life.
Right.
So, I think all of our goals is to educate so that doctors don't miss these signs and
Right.
symptoms as something more serious going on. So for you, when was it apparent that you wanted to do something to give back to the community? Because I'm sure you felt at times people just didn't get it. They didn't understand what you had.
Yeah. I think for me, I think there were probably a bunch of things that kind of led to me wanting to help educate people on it definitely was my own selfish reason that, nobody could help me out. I was also really frustrated because my mom has endometriosis. So when I was diagnosed with it, my mom, we had kind of gone to my OBGYN and said, in Maine, and said, hey, I have endometriosis, like I need a specialist for this. And she goes, no, that's impossible. That doctor got it wrong. You're way too young to have endometriosis. There's no way.
Huh.
And I'm like, okay. Never went back to that OBGYN again after that. But it was just kind of the ignorance, I think, of, some, surgeons seeing it in my stomach.
Yeah.
And then going to this OBGYN and her still being ignorant enough to say, no, you don't have it. And that for me was, okay, so you are, and I think it comes down to that thing where you treat every patient the same, and you can't, because, even though the rule book says, okay, you have to be, I don't know the age, but, 18 plus to get this or whatever. And somebody's coming to you and saying, I have this. And you're like, no, well, that's impossible because the rule book says. And it's like, no, it's not impossible.
And what rule? Because that's not accurate either.
Right, exactly. And I think that was kind of, that's when I got frustrated about it. And at that point, I had all of this frustration because, there was also a really big misconception as well with, pain medication. And that was also my mom being a doctor, that was really frustrating for the both of us, because after she got diagnosed with endometriosis, it took her years to find anybody who would even prescribe her Tylenol 3, which is a very, very, and so I think for me, then my frustration came from, okay, no, like everybody's telling me to take Aleve and Advil, and I would do that and I would still end up in the ER. So I'm like, okay. And that became really frustrating to me. So after that, and not being able to get any sort of care that I needed, I took to my blog on, my website, and wrote a blog about that. And then the Endometriosis Foundation had reached out to me about going to the Blossom Ball. And when I was at the Blossom Ball, I heard so many inspirational women, speak about their experiences and how similar they were. And then it's going through my mind, oh my Lord, there's so many women out there who are going through this, and it's not fair. So I think kind of at that point, I was like, okay, if there's anything I can do, and I remember, saying that if there's anything I can do, I want to do it, because it's, not a lot of people know about it.
Yeah. And I also think we're still in a place right now too, where we've reached kind of awareness has grown so much thanks to so many of our predecessors and the work that you've been doing. And yet it's like, what's the management? What's the treatment? Because repeated surgeries don't always work. So hormonal suppression doesn't always work. So what do we do? And I think that's a frustration I have as someone who's had the illness now, diagnosed with it since 2016, multiple surgeries, infertility treatments. I'm just sometimes so frustrated because I'm like, well, what else can we do for each other? How can we advocate for better research, better treatment options? Because we're just so limited scientifically and medically as to what we can do other than be there for one another, because it's that chronic illness that just does not quit.
Right. Yeah, no, it really, I think that's kind of the thing is, after I had my first surgery a few years ago, like I said, when I was in high school, it subsided for a while. And unfortunately, those endometriosis attacks have come back, actually probably within the past month or two, have come back full swing, and I have to go back and start seeing endometriosis specialist again. But I think that's what's so frustrating, is that because of the lack of treatments and, and pain management and all of, and managing, actually finding, I don't know, a cure or something that will help lessen the, all of it. Because of that, I just completely lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
But
I was going to ask you, just like, how mentally do you cope knowing that you had like an endometriosis reprieve and now you're having the symptoms again?
That's a really good question. I am still figuring it out, if I'm being completely honest. I find myself sometimes getting really overwhelmed and stressed out about it. I guess for me, working out helps a lot. Honestly, sometimes it helps with the pain. Sometimes it just kind of helps to reroute the thinking, whatever. I treat myself really well. I give myself, my, mental health nights, or my self-care nights, or whatever. I think like those are the types of things that help me. But it's really frustrating. There's no getting around that. That's for sure.
Yeah. What advice would you give to someone who might be going through something similar, where they might be feeling like totally dejected and their body's failing them because of endo?
Um, you're not alone. That's a number one. I think that's a really big one, because I think sometimes, when you're not able to go out with friends or have to cancel plans because of it, that can be super isolating.
Mhm.
So that's number one. I guess my biggest piece of advice is to not put too much pressure on yourself. Speaking from experience, I guess just endometriosis attacks for me they've always been really embarrassing. So whenever I have, my mom or my boyfriend or whoever tell me like, no, that's not embarrassing. Like it's normal. You don't have control over it. Like we're here. I think, it's just accepting and understanding that it's normal, and that this is, this is your body. And also just doing anything that can make yourself comfortable when you are going through the endo attacks and stuff like that. That's my biggest thing, is like, I just have to make sure I'm comfortable. And as soon as I can get myself comfortable, the better I am.
You mentioned about your boyfriend, and I think that when you're dating and have the endo, how do you even begin that conversation? Maybe somebody's in your shoes right now and they're just dating someone. For you, what was that first conversation like?
Um, Honestly, I think he kind of, my boyfriend now, he kind of knew that I had endo, because I at that point, once we started dating, I was so uh I'm a big advocate for it. I posted
Yeah,
on my
yeah.
Instagram, stuff like that. However, I do think that the him understanding completely what that meant wasn't 100% there. So when it kind of got to a point where we began being intimate with each other, I had to make it, I had to tell him, make him understand, listen, there are going to be times where I'm going to need to stop. There are going to be times where I'm going to have to go a week or two without being intimate, because like it's really painful.
Mhm.
And I'm not, my body does not work that way, where it's ready for that at all times. And I think being really honest about that with somebody, if they don't get that, if they make you feel guilty about that, if they don't understand that, it's not the person for you,
Right.
because it's something that, unfortunately, we have to deal with for the rest of our lives. And if you want to be in our life for the rest of our life, you're going to have to deal with it.
Yes.
Because for me, if being intimate is not comfortable, then I should not feel like I have to do that. And I've been in positions before where people did not understand that, and that, I think, is where the embarrassment and shame came for me. And I just want all girls to like never have to experience that, because it's really not fair.
No, no, that's a terrible feeling. And
Yeah.
I've been on dates where people will Google me before, and because I've been very, open about my endo diagnosis, the questions I get asked are just so, I mean, like, just do a little bit of research if you're going to have a kind of line of questioning that feels like an interrogation, but it's like, is endo an STD? Could you give it?
Right. Oh my gosh, that's the number one question. Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, okay. We're on a, we're all on our soapboxes about an STD. Like, no, this is
Right.
a chronic inflammatory illness that affects our daily lives, many of us. And
Right.
that was hard. That's hard. And I think you're right about a partner, because we always talk about loved ones supporting us, but partnering, significant others, it can really be a hurdle on a relationship. So to find someone who is really compassionate and empathetic and understanding, and I think that goes back to having emotional intelligence,
For
can
sure.
really make all the difference for helping somebody that has the disease, because you're so, it's such an, it's your body. So you have to have intimate trust with that other person, and they need to
Right.
understand that. And if they don't, I always say, see ya.
Exactly. I'm like, kick him to the curb, girl.
Yep. See you later. Um, so for your, because you've done so much advocacy work, what is your biggest wish? I mean, we all say a cure, but like, what do you think what advancements do we need like right now? What do you think that we should be having at our disposal right now for the endo community?
Um, that's a hard question.
It
Because
is.
because I guess the easy answer is, of course, like we want to cure and stuff like that. I think for me, I am a huge. I'm a monster when I am uncomfortable and when I am in pain. So for me, it's pain management and having accessibility to something that allows us to, I guess kind of somewhere where it feels safe to be like, okay, I'm in pain and I need something more than Advil and Aleve, because again, as I've said before, that's my biggest frustration. Because I think people automatically go, oh, okay, you want oxycodone, you want hydrocodone. It's like, no, there are other medications like tramadol and toradol where you don't get any sort of high, but it is still a stronger medication, that kind of allows you to ease that pain. So for me, it would be, I guess endometriosis specialists and OBGYNs being more understanding of the amount of pain that it puts somebody in, and
Yeah.
understanding that saying, oh, go take an Aleve, no, like it's not gonna work.
Yeah. It's not gonna work.
So I think for me, it's short answer is pain management.
Yeah. Because I think that's where we're at, because we're not close to a cure. We don't have
Right.
better treatment options. So what do we do in the interim? Because it
Right.
can't be wait for another surgery.
Right.
Every day
No,
is
and I think that's the thing is also, moving. I have a friend, and she is from Australia, and she was telling me that the other day, she goes, oh yeah, well, right now she's younger than me. And she goes, well, right now we're talking about a hysterectomy. And I said, what OBGYN is telling you to get a hysterectomy at age 22? It's ridiculous. So I think also moving away from any OBGYN being able to offer
Yeah.
that off the
Yeah.
bat.
Agree. Absolutely agree. And that goes back to education and just
Right.
educating doctors in med school. So even if that's not their specialty, they can at least recognize it so they don't lead
Right.
people in the wrong path. Lexie, as always, it's a pleasure having you. Thank you for your continued work. It's really important and helpful.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.